Welcome back. Now, electronic cigarette devices are fast becoming the norm, especially for young people. E-cigarettes are easily marketed and accessible despite being unregulated, according to Dr. Sharon Nyatsanza, Deputy of the National Council Against Smoking. E-cigarettes and vape products lack the marketing restriction of traditional tobacco products. This, she says, opens the gate for another generation to become addicted to nicotine. What can be done to ensure that young people don't fall for the trend? And how can the youth be protected? To discuss this further, let's speak to Dr. Sharon Nyatsanza. She joins us now virtually. Doc, thank you very much for your time here on All Angles. Now, of course, a lot of people would say the argument rather lately has been that it's better to vape than to smoke actual cigarettes. But it looks like that argument is being thrown out the door.
So definitely that argument is very tricky because we don't know much about e-cigarettes at this stage. But one thing that is clear is that we cannot allow the young people, the adolescents, the teenagers, for example, to start using e-cigarettes because they get addicted much more easier because they're still young. And when they do, they actually are more likely to actually move on to other drugs and even to move on to tobacco products. So it's very, very important to try and stop initiation right from the beginning.
All right, so the South African Bureau of Standards is looking at regulating e-cigarettes. What would be your contribution in terms of what they can do to regulate or to make sure that the youth doesn't necessarily get easy access to these products?
So the Bureau of Standards is definitely working on coming up with voluntary standards on how the industry can regulate itself. But what the National Council Against Smoking is advocating for is for the finalization of the Tobacco Control Bill, which was published in 2018. And still in 2022, we don't have that bill finalized as law. And what that law basically provides for is measures, for example, that stop underage vaping. Through that law, you cannot sell e-cigarettes to young people. You cannot use e-cigarettes in places where you cannot use cigarettes. So, for example, in public transport, in public indoor spaces, you won't be able to use e-cigarettes. And it also crucially starts to regulate how the products are marketed, how they are promoted, and how they're advertised. And that really is very essential to try and stop another development of another generation of nicotine addicts.
It's quite interesting that you bring up that, the tobacco control because of the fact that, smoking, obviously, a few years ago, you were prohibited from smoking inside a confined area like a building, etc. But you see people vaping in the office, vaping inside a restaurant, etc., because that is deemed to be okay compared to actual cigarettes. So I'm guessing you also want that to be regulated as far as vaping and e-cigarettes are concerned.
So definitely, the challenge is that e-cigarettes don't fall within the definition of tobacco, and because of that, they've managed to escape the laws that were meant for, similar products, which are tobacco products. And what unfortunately we still have is that the aerosols which are being emitted from e-cigarettes are not harm-free. They still have nicotine, they still have metals and other particulates which are actually harmful for inhalation. So when someone still uses the product in the presence of someone who does not use them, it's not only unfair, but actually it's a violation of their constitutional rights to an environment that is safe and to breathe in clean air. So all these are aspects that the new tobacco control bill, when passed as law, will basically touch on. But we have seen, for example, some other spaces, like I think I've seen how train. I've seen, some other shopping centers. They actually prohibit. They've moved on already to say you cannot smoke in this area, and this includes e-cigarettes. But what we do need, obviously, is a law to ensure that that is comprehensive to protect the non-users as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, Dr. Sharon Nyatsanza. She's the Deputy of the National Council Against Smoking.